I'm joined today by Alicia Bell, elite figure athlete, track and field coach, fitness model, personal trainer, and online coach based in Toronto, Canada. Alicia, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Well, listen, before we actually dig right into all this contest preparation and your amazing background, can you give listeners a little bit more about your background, how you got into competing as a figure athlete?
Sure. Where to start? I've always been athletic and I always competed in sports. Um, I had previously had like an ACL injury, and after the ACL injury, I kind of like felt like I lost like I was a personal trainer and I always worked out, so I felt like I kind of lost that like fitnessy background. And then shortly after the ACL injury, I had a tumor, and the tumor wasn't cancerous or anything, but like when I went through the chemo, I ended up feeling like really puffy, and I was like a fitness person trapped in like a fluffy body.
Oh,
And then
no.
my friend had always competed, and she was just like, "Oh, you need a goal. Like you need a goal, like to get back on track and whatever." And she's like, "You should compete." And I was always against it, and because of its subjectivity, and because I used to run track, and it's very like this person crossed the finish line and won, and
Yeah, it's very
like
straightforward to see who the
very,
best is.
yeah, 100%. And so I was just like, I don't know if I like that. Like, I'd rather like, just, work out. But then I found myself more and more just being like, okay, yeah, you're right. I need a goal. So I ended up starting to compete, but I competed in bikini and not figure. And I actually like love bikini. I'm like a bikini girl trapped in a figure girl's body that actually the body wants to be physique. And I'm fighting that too. So,
And can you give listeners a little background if they're not familiar with just the differences between figure and bikini?
Sure. Bikini's like a softer look. It's still like muscular and fit, but they're looking for nice curves. They're not looking for someone that's got striated muscles or too much, size. But they're also looking for its overall look. So it's, your personality on
Yep.
stage. And so you're kind of judged on everything. It's just like if a beauty pageant met like, um, I guess a fitness pageant. That's kind of what it is for bikini.
For sure.
Whereas figure, it's less of that like personality on stage because you only have four poses. And then it's, you're a little like the athletes are a little bit more muscular, but they still have heels. You still have like that feminine side. It's basically very feminine, but you're showing off like the muscles and the balance and the symmetry. And they're looking for an X frame versus looking for like a curve, like a S curve, I guess is the best way to put it.
Gotcha. And you, of course, you recently competed in the Arnold Amateur World Championships. As you said before the show, fantastic result for anybody else, but for yourself, disappointed with second. Um,
Yeah, I'm very hard on myself.
well, can you just walk us through, what's the process there for preparing an event like that? How many months out do you start? What do the training cycles look like? Can you give us a bit of a glimpse?
Sure. Well, everybody's body like responds differently, but I'm also somebody that I start way far out from a show just to kind of get into the mindset, because for me that's the training is really easy because my whole life, I've been a track athlete and played sports, and I've trained like twice a day, three times a day, and that part's easy. Like I could live in the gym. Like I'd
Awesome.
rather live in the gym, but it's the diet for me that's hard. So it takes me a little while to kind of get in the groove of things. But like some people like turn it on and they can just go. But I like kind of starting far out. I think that prep was started 22 weeks out.
Okay.
Um, I just like being on prep. Like some people
Yep.
like hate it and like they're miserable, but like I like to have the goal and the challenge, and just to I like the countdown number to know like, okay, I have 9 weeks, I have 8 weeks, I have 7 weeks. Like I like to start far out, so I'm like 22. Okay, that's great. I have a number.
Awesome. Yeah,
Um,
I had recently had Eric Helms on, Dr. Eric Helms, and he mentioned how that's such a benefit to be starting further out, and
It is,
what.
and it's when you start further out too, it's less aggressive, and you don't have to like
Yeah.
panic at the end and do extreme measures or things like that. When you're ready, you're ready. And if you start far out, then you've got that buffer.
And you said 22 weeks. Now, what would a more conventional starting place be?
12 to 16, if you've had
Gotcha.
like a good off season where you didn't, I guess what we like to call like spill over. So that's where you just like gain unnecessary body fat. Like you do have to put on weight to like grow muscle and build, but sometimes some people kind of
Go for it
feel
a
like
little
they've
too
been
much.
deprived. Yeah, I feel like they've been deprived, and
For sure. So for yourself, 22 weeks out, and as you're getting into the training, is there a certain goal in that, mesocycle in terms of just adding size, or
For
what's the
me,
game plan?
I'm the opposite of everybody. So you take the regular athlete, and I'm literally the opposite in every aspect: nutrition, training, time,
Interesting.
types of cardio. So for most people, they want to build in their off season, but me, I can't grow anymore. I really don't have anything left to grow, and if I do, I would be bumped up to the next category, which is physique. And I
Gotcha.
don't have a desire. Like, I respect the physique athletes like completely, but for me personally, like, I love the figure look and I want to stay figure. So I tend to do a lot of, I guess, non-conventional figure curl workouts. I end up doing a lot of circuits, a lot of just like cardio based exercises, and my cardio volume is a lot higher than most people because of my track background. Like, we'd warm up for 45 minutes before we even start the workout. So where somebody who never did cardio before can get the same results from like 20 minutes of cardio, I have to do much greater volume to get the same results because my body's very adapt to it. So my preps are not very easy, and if you think about it like that way, compared to a lot of people.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you sort of about the pros and cons of, obviously, you said, not wanting to go up a class, and so not having to gain the muscles. Sometimes people might think that's kind of a benefit of having to do the cardio, but then you mentioned, or the circuit training, but then you mentioned on the cardio side of things, you have to do quite a lot more compared to others to get the same results, right?
Yeah, and I've also, like, some body parts, like, I don't even train because, like, for instance, like, I don't train biceps because we find that when you train your biceps, it takes away from the cap on your delt, and they're looking for your delt. So I don't really train arms. And then I can't grow my legs, so I don't really train my legs. And then, so, I'm starting to run out of body parts that I can, like, actually train like a bodybuilder. So, yeah.
And for you then, in terms of programming that, is that just minimizing the number of sets, or keeping things in the higher rep range, or just dovetailing into some more strength work a little bit to make sure that you're maintaining to a certain degree, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't lift anything till failure. The whole goal is just to make sure I don't grow. Like, we do maintenance and things like that, but I'm not trying to, like, build. I'm not, I'm not hitting those really low reps for heavy weights. Like, that's very rare if I ever do that.
Gotcha. And how long would that process play out for then? Does it look like that right up until the competition, or is there tweaks going on as well with the nutrition side of things?
My diet's pretty. I don't eat too much carbs. Like, we keep the carbs pretty low. Um, nothing, nothing like crazy. We still, like, do pretty healthy preps just because we start pretty far out.
And is there a certain amount, maybe at 22 weeks, that you'd start out at, and that you work your way down to over the course of that time, that you can give folks a little bit of insight on? Is there a certain percentage in a week that you might reduce in terms of calorically? Is it just changing the macros that gets you to where you want to go, or what types of strategies is over that course of that time on the nutrition front would get you to where you want to be?
Well, for me, we keep the diet pretty similar, like the entire prep, where I'll be, like, pretty low carb during the week, and then we'll do, like, what we call a refeed meal. Um, and then if you're looking at, like, the average prep, most people, if you do, like, a 12-week prep, they're dropping the calories like 2.5 to like 3% each week because it's an extreme, right? So
Hmm.
to get that stage look, that leanness, they do that. But for me personally, like I said, I'm, like, not the norm. I don't really have that differentiating diet. Whereas, like, the only time it really changes would be, like, peak week, when we just need to make sure that I look full, or I don't look too striated, because I tend to, like, like, I do have really good muscle development. So it's a very fine line between looking too hard and striated and, like, then looking too soft. So we just have to just aim on how I look, and then that's how my diet will change during the peak week. So it tends to be just adding a bit more carbs or fats. It was really, every show is different.
And for yourself, do you find that an advantage, not having to kind of shift your diet around too much versus, for other competitors, I imagine there's more significant shifts going on with different macros or caloric intake?
Yeah, every show, like, we kind of get better and better at, like, learning what my body does. Um, and I like, some people, have a little bit of a difficult time, like, whereas, like, my body pretty much responds very well to just low carb intake. And so we don't really have to, like, stress or do anything, you know, crazy. So I think it works to my advantage that my body's that way.
And did that come out of, you mentioned trial and error, like how long ago, or was there competitions or initially earlier in your career where you were experimenting with different strategies where then you stumbled upon this as for you being the best strategy or
It was kind of like like everything is tracked, right? So when we had my carbs higher, we just noticed like I wasn't losing any weight. I was kind of staying the same. And then when we learned to just keep low carbs for me, then my body would definitely start, changing and dropping fat. And yeah, so it just kind of like as you go through the prep, you just like kind of adjust things. And we learned that like, oh, this will be my eighth show that we're going into.
okay,
So we kind of learned that early on.
awesome. And you talked about on the aerobic training side of things, obviously doing more aerobic training than maybe the conventional, the average fitness competitor. Can you walk us through, what types of endurance training you might prefer and, steady state bouts? Is there a certain intensity that you're looking for?
Yeah, well, for me, because when you look at a figure competitor, you want balance. And for me, because of my track background, my legs were actually like, I always grew up in like running track and my legs are my strong point. They're amazing. They're big and muscular. But then when you try to look at a balanced body and you look at a figure competitor and then you look at me, my legs were just like too big. And I had never been told that before. I was like, what do you mean my legs are too big? Like, these are awesome.
Yeah, I'm a track athlete. Come on.
Yeah, I'm a track athlete. So we now keep me away from doing too much intense HIIT. Like I'll do HIIT training, but I'll do longer intervals. Just because, have you ever seen an endurance athlete with like crazy amount of like leg muscle?
No.
Like you still want leg muscle, but you want it to be like cut and you want it to be very like balanced to your body, creating that X frame. So I do longer intervals just because we don't want my legs to grow. Whereas if we put shorter sprint intervals like track, training, we might have that point where my legs just want to blow up again because that's what they were for so long. So I tend to do more steady state or more like longer HIIT intervals. So we
Uh,
mix it up and we mix up machines too because the body's really smart at adapt. So I'm not always on the Stairmaster. I'm not always on the treadmill. I'm not always on the elliptical. I'm just like pretty much every machine,
gotcha.
just switching it up. Yeah.
And for you, is there a certain distance, like if you were to do whether it's 400s or 800s or 1500s, or maybe it's a time on the treadmill when you talk about these longer hit bouts or a range that you
It
might?
Yeah, we go for time, and that it's the one thing that does change as the prep goes on. Usually, we don't want to overtax the system too early, so we'll start out, with like less cardio, and then we just add it in as needed, like as we get closer to the show.
Awesome. And would you say in terms of the hit making up what portion of maybe the total aerobic training? Like is most of the training done then in the kind of that aerobic zone?
For me, most of it's done. Yeah, more of like the endurance zone versus versus doing the anaerobic stuff. So I would say probably for me, it's about 70-30.
Okay. Awesome. Of course, you mentioned you are obviously an outlier in terms of a lot of your peers, and so when you work with clients who are preparing for a competition, what are some of the common mistakes that you see in your clients when they're getting ready for a prep, whether it's on the training or the nutrition front?
Oh, so everybody's so different. You know, a lot of it is mental aspects. Like, and even for me, it's the mental side of things. You never see yourself as you really are, so you tend to be really, really hard on yourself, and it's why I don't coach myself. It's why my boyfriend, like Sean, coaches me because, like, if it was up to me, like, I hate how I look even on show day. I don't think I'm like shredded, and then I'm like, I win overalls at Ontario, but it's for most people, it's mental aspects. Like, they don't. They stress when they stress about their body, their cortisol raises, their body wants to hold on to fat, their hormones aren't balanced out. So it's like if you can control the stress and like not worrying and like leave the worrying to your coach and like you just be a robot, that's kind of honestly the best way to go about it. So you can just get rid of that cortisol factor because you don't want cortisol when you're already stressing your body so much physically. But there's that, and then there's also diet. Like even like little nibbles like do add up. Like everything's a calorie. Like it's all about calories in versus calories out, and sometimes things are so subjective. It's like did that bite, those bites that you were taking of your like boyfriend's sandwich your whole prep, like did that prevent you from first to second? Like, I mean, it's just everything literally counts. So it's like diet definitely. Diet and the mental aspect of it are the two biggest mistakes. people
Yeah,
make.
for sure. I mean, mindset's such a huge piece, even in terms of general population trying to lose weight. And for yourself, are there any strategies that you use, whether it's sorry for yourself or even with clients, that helps on that kind of mindset piece? You mentioned sort of just having a good coach that you can then follow the guidelines and not have to worry so much about making decisions, which is obviously stressful. But anything else in terms of that mindset piece that can help people to?
Well, my clients, like everybody's different, but when I see a client kind of like struggling on that front, I always ask them, like, what's your why? Like, is your why bigger than like having the extra bite, or like, why are you putting your body through this, but then cheating on your diet? Like, what's your why, and how far, like, what are your goals? Like, why are you doing this? And then when they really like sit down and think, and once they're like, this is my why. Like, write it out, put it on the fridge, put it somewhere where you see it every day. And just that way you remind yourself, okay, like, it's not forever. This is temporary. Like, I can do this. Like, just little reminders for themselves. Like, I write stuff on my mirror, like in the bathroom. So I just kind of like give them like little tips and tricks like that.
Yeah, those are amazing. It's amazing how just seeing things even written down, reading them, reinforcements. I've heard the adage of asking why 3 times to really get to the root of something. It's amazing how that can, as you mentioned, sort of gets you to the real ultimate reason why we're doing some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, again, for those clients trying to prep up for competition on the training side of things, obviously for yourself, you mentioned things being a bit different, but what are some of the sort of maybe some of the fundamental principles for someone who's not in the same position as yourself, who's getting ready for competition?
Definitely, like some of the principles, the fundamental principles, I would say, are especially for newbies, like people who have kind of floated around the gym, feel athletic, or like decide they want to do a show. I can give you a workout, but it's up to you to control the intensity and the effort that you're putting into that workout. Because I can give you a workout, you can go to the gym and do it, but like, how much did you really get from it? Did you challenge yourself? It's really, I try to get my athletes to record the weights that they're using week to week, so they can progress. And then it's also like mind muscle connection is very important. Like, I could go in and like have like a workout, be sweating, and like I just went through the motions. Like, was I thinking about the muscles that I was using? Was I getting like proper contraction and blood flow? So I think that those are two huge things. It's definitely the intensity that they are training, because you can go in and do 60 minutes of cardio and like scroll through Instagram for the entire 60 minutes, or
Sure.
you can go in and like come out like dying. Which person do you think got the better workout and got more benefit from it?
Yeah,
So,
definitely great insights there.
and if you're doing like, say I give you 15 minutes cardio, you do that 15 minutes intensely, that's great. We might never have to change your cardio, your whole prep, but if you go in and do that 15 minutes like lackadaisically, like, then I'm going to have to increase your cardio. And it's just like, who really wants to be in the gym doing cardio for like hours and hours? But if you're not putting the intensity into it, you're not going to get anything from it. So then as a coach, like, I can only change what I see. And if you're telling me you're going hard, but you're really not, like, I can only go, okay, you're going hard, but your body's not responding. We have to increase. Like, and so
Yeah, it's true. I mean, such a great point in terms of people obviously trying to always find that magical program online or whatnot that they can just, the program's going to do the work for them and they just have to follow it. And of course, there's the main tenets of well-designed programs that will elicit a lot of change. But as you mentioned, that X factor of just, how hard are you working during the actual session is such a key determinant of how well you're going to have to adapt and progress from that. So great tip there. And for yourself as well, if we shift gears to on the supplement side of things, I mean, in terms of your nutrition, it sounds like obviously that's pretty well laid out for you and not too many tweaks throughout the course. Is there anything on the supplementation front, whether it's in the early days or leading up to the competition, that you add in to help to support?
Just like supplements that help like control your adrenals and your stress factors, then those things like kind of definitely need to be implemented, because not only do you have life stress, you have training stress, you have cardio stress, your body's really stressed. So kind of controlling the estrogen and the stress in your body are like huge factors.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, obviously, training intensely is stressful, dieting is stressful, the other 22 hours of the day as well, if people are busy, all these stressors sort of add up. And of course, the body is naturally primed to resist burning fat the leaner it gets. So it becomes harder and harder and harder to get it to do so. So that notion around, obviously cortisol, stress hormones playing a role and estrogen as well. Anything else for you in terms of caffeine and pre-workouts, things like that? Are you a coffee drinker? Does that have a role to play in all this?
I will admittedly say that I abuse caffeine, especially on prep when your energy levels get low. You kind of tend to, and you can't take in food for energy. You just go like, okay, I'll have coffee, I'll have an espresso, or I'll have a caffeine pill. But I wouldn't recommend that. um, but yeah, I do tend to use like I'm not a big like huge pre-workout person. I do take it sometimes. The thing about like pre-workouts and like BCAAs is a lot of them are artificially sweetened. So we try and stay away from like artificials because for a lot of people that causes like bloating and digestion issues.
Yep.
I do sometimes take them. Again, that's like, you're deep into prep and you like need that extra boost. Or you can find like unflavored ones, but they're not like, I don't really enjoy those very
Yeah,
much. It's
for
like
sure.
hard to get down. And stevia, I do have like the odd stevia like sweetening thing, which isn't terrible. But I'm not like a huge, like I feel that caffeine definitely does the trick for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a great appetite suppressant, so it helps to get people through. I mean, I know some of the pre-workouts too, people need to kind of watch out for because oftentimes there's more caffeine added than even what's on the label.
Yeah.
But ironically,
Yeah.
just the straight caffeine tablets are a lot more inexpensive, and you can kind of accurately dose if you're wanting that 50 or 150 or 200 milligrams.
Yeah, exactly. And you know exactly where you're getting. Whereas like I think a cup of coffee on average is like 100 and 150, but you don't really know like
Yeah, there was
like
that
how
this
strong was it brewed
for
like
sure. They had that study done on the Starbucks coffee, and it was like Monday and Tuesday was twice as strong as Wednesday and Thursday. So I'm not sure if they were just trying to help people get their week started or what was going
Oh
on
my
there,
gosh, I didn't even know that. That's funny.
but
I
and
believe it.
as it relates to recovery, obviously you're having to train intensely, and one of the big aspects of being able to continue to train intensely is your capacity to recover. So, are there any strategies, whether it's around sleep, whether it's around different modalities, therapies that you implement to help you recover?
Yeah, like sleep is huge. Like and magnesium. I'm big like I use a lot of different supplements that have magnesium in it, like zinc. Those things are really great for recovery. Glutamine is amazing, and it's also really good for your digestion. So I use glutamine. And for recovery, I do really love infrared sauna for a couple of reasons. Like, I don't know, when I get in there, it's just like really relaxing and it's kind of like de-stressing because where I go, it's like this literally like this like tiny little square and it's
Yeah,
like nobody around and it's just like me in it. There's no one else. There's no like crazy half naked people doing weird things. Like
yeah, you can
it's
just like
good. Like
zone out. You get your own Zen
yeah.
room.
Yeah. And then I actually last prep I did a couple of times I went to cryo and I did find that after I did cryo I felt really refreshed and regenerized and like like just I don't know. It was a very interesting. Like only did 3 sessions, and so I'm not like. I mean, I totally understand like ice baths and things like that, but cryo was just like completely different. I find like ice baths you get in and you're like stressed because you're like, oh my god, it's so cold. But then like the cryo is like done in like 2-3 minutes, and it's not as intense, but it's still really really cold. I don't know. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely one where they've shown that if you can stack up these sessions more back to back, then there's the efficacy can go up for sure in terms of cryotherapy. I always find it interesting because between a cold water immersions and cryotherapy, you get to about the same core temperature, but one of them's 8 degrees and the other one's like minus 110 or whatnot. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's impressive, but definitely for some people that impact on in terms of perceived muscle soreness and stuff is really can be a big benefit for some folks.
Hmm.
And
And
in
I
ter-
do weekly massages too, and so I find that really helps too.
Terrific. And any on the sleep front, is there a certain amount of hours that are you pretty good with kind of having a certain bedtime or a certain amount of hours? Is it pretty variable in terms of having to train and work and everything else? Like, how does that look for you?
I mean, everybody's really different, but I find like the magic number for me is between like 6 and 8.
Hmm.
Anything after 8, I'm like over, like rested. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I have a hard time getting going, and I just feel like more sleepy. And the same thing for me with like naps. If I take a nap in the day, like I can't just like have a cat nap and feel refreshed. I like have a sleep and then I feel wrote off for the rest of the day. Like so, I just need that magical number between 6 and 8. I usually try and get to bed. I prefer 10 because I want to get those, that good REM sleep, but I don't usually get to bed till about 11. And I just got a puppy, so currently my sleep is slightly disrupted
I was gonna say, yeah,
because
that's definitely one that throws off the sleep for sure.
Yeah, he's cute though. But and
There you
then
go.
the other dog is kind of used to like me getting up at like 5 or 6, so he's good all night. But then this little guy, kind of middle of the night, is like wakes up and just he's a French bulldog and he's kind of snorty. So even if he's like not bugging me, I hear him like snorting because I'm a really light sleeper.
Oh
So
no. And so for you, you mentioned like naps and stuff like that. Not is not a strategy that you use, or
not for me, but I mean they're great. Like I mean, if you can get like a little cat nap and you feel refreshed, and bodybuilders way back in the day used to like take a nap before they went and trained, like the old school bodybuilders. Like so they're like I mean I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just not for me. I don't think because I feel like once I nap, I feel so groggy and can't function
yeah, you can
properly.
definitely get some of that sleep inertia that comes on, especially if the naps are a little
Yeah,
bit too long. They can it can. I remember my first nap in high school before a basketball game. I didn't know what day it was or where I was. I mean, it was
that's
some
exactly
really
how I
bad
am.
sleep inertia. But recently had Sherry Ma on, who's a sleep expert, and she mentioned sort of having those shorter 15, 20 minute, not even really falling asleep, just closing the eyes can have some benefit in terms of you know recovery and especially on the mental side in terms of cognitive function, memory, things like that. But shifting gears a little bit to your background as a track and field coach, now how does that play a role in how you train, how you prepare for competitions, or is it more so sometimes dealing with other clients and athletes?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of take like everything from like my background and kind of put it into like how I train other athletes. Um, for me, I mean, it was like one of my I love track. It's my passion. It's kind of where my heart is. Coaching it, there's not so much money in it, so I've kind of stepped back this year from that front. But I do like learned a lot of like, but that's where I first got into the gym because there's a huge weightlifting component when it comes to like speed training and hurdle training, and that's where I really like kind of got my first taste of like the gym and where lifting and just technique and things like that. And I find my cardio, or like when I have to run, I I say my running economy is a lot better than like a lot of other like quote unquote bodybuilders because they don't have that background. So I feel like I get a lot more out of my cardio because I can conserve my energy properly with proper form and still go hard. Where a lot of people, if your running economy sucks and you're running terrible and like flat footed and just what you're not using the proper muscles, you're not getting as much as you out of your cardio session. So I feel like that totally has benefited me as like a bodybuilder when I need to like drop fat and do my cardio. So
Absolutely. It's amazing how when people swim, it's so obvious when your form sucks that it's a lot harder work, but it's harder for people to intuitively feel that when they're running in terms of how well improving running economy and form and technique just has a massive,
Mhm.
massive impact.
Yeah, or even just the proper running shoes, because a lot of people lift and train in their same running shoes, and it's not very good for. Once you have a problem in your arch, it goes, as you know, like ankles, knees, hips, back, shoulders. So, you get all these people who are like, oh, I have this shoulder issue or this back issue, and it's because like I'm training hard for the show. But then you look at like the cardio that they're doing; they're running like flat-footed on a pair of like flat-footed like non running shoes for all the
Yeah,
cardio, and it's
definitely.
like, okay, well, where's the real issue?
And with your background as a track and field coach, are there certain suggestions or tips that you might give, whether it's someone who's preparing for a figure competition, whether it's a client who's trying to maybe just lose weight, in terms of whether it's a certain amount of sprints or types of training that you'd recommend?
um, you know, again, like everybody's so different. Like everything's individually basis.
For sure.
But like just make sure that you're in the right shoes and get fitted like for running versus when you're doing lifting. Like, and shoes have an expiry date. They're made of EVA foam that's like a compressible foam. And if you're pounding them for even just like about 3 months, say you're working out 7 days a week, three months of the year, they're done. Those shoes need to be, they might look clean and you've kept them well, but they're not benefiting you. So like as much as it sucks this day and age, but you're paying for the technology and the shoes, but every couple of months you need to replace those shoes, because if you start getting injuries and it's related to like the impact for the compression that you're putting on that, like the body weight and that force, then you really just need to replace your shoes. That's like my biggest advice is like, don't keep your shoes for too long if you're working out intensely for a really like long period of time. You need new shoes.
Absolutely. Yeah, as you mentioned, especially so many clients who just, they've been using the same shoes for 4 or 5 years, let alone months. So if you're
Yeah,
struggling with some
people.
ankle issues and foot issues, that's a good first place to start.
or even back. Like honestly, especially lifting, a lot of people develop like back issues. But if you're also maybe improper lifting technique, but if you're adding in like terrible shoes on top of that, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Like try and eliminate all the variables and just suck it up and replace your shoes.
And a little bit more on the track and field front in terms of mobility and flexibility. Some of the warm ups that you obviously do as a track and field athlete, have you feel like you've benefited a lot from that in terms of your moving into the gym and working on that side of things?
You think I would. Problem is that, like, I spend so much time in the gym. I will admittedly say that I do not spend enough time on mobility. And that's honestly also, like, you say you should know your greatest weaknesses. So the mobility thing is also one of my greatest weaknesses because on stage, when it comes to posing, I'm not one of those people who has a naturally lordotic curve.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're posing, especially in figure, you do have to have this huge arch. Like, you're arching and pulling your shoulders back towards the judges and your back, but you're, like, keeping your glutes high. And because of my lack of mobility, I'm not the best at that. Like I have this very strong, powerful back, but my posing could be better because I need to focus more on my mobility, which I know better as a track coach,
yeah, exactly.
and I
There
know
you go.
better as a fitness coach. I know better, but it's that I'm also an athlete, and it's like I just want to leave. I want to go home. I want to eat. I want to
There you
go cuddle
go.
my puppies. Like,
There you go. Right.
but
Even the
I
best.
know I need to, and I should, and I know what to do, and it should benefit me. But I will admittedly say I don't spend enough time doing it.
Well, I mean, just as you mentioned, even the best have coaches. You have a coach, and that's exactly some of the reasons why even all the best have coaches, right? To get them to do the things that even fundamentally, if we are aware of, it's just difficult to program it all in. And like you said, when you're tired and it's time to go home and everything else, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Listen, you're obviously very busy with training and clients, etc. Can you give us a little glimpse into, daily routines for you? What are you getting up in the morning? Are you a coffee person? Sounds like you are. Training in the morning? Is it straight to work? Give us a little idea of how that looks for you.
Yeah, I try and get up early. I always go and do fasted cardio, and then I come home and eat. And I'm primarily an online coach, so once I, come home and eat, I work on a few programs, updates, whatever I need to do for that day, blog posts, whatever I have going on. And then in between my meals, like that's kind of what I'm doing is I'm working on programs. And then I fit in my workout, usually depending on like Sean, depending on like when he wants to train, if we're training together. So I'm pretty flexible like that. So it's kind of fun to just rearrange my workouts and just how my day goes. I really like that I don't have like a 100% set schedule, and it really works well when you're trying to be very competitive like I am, to not have to work that 9 to 5 and be forced into like, training late or training everything super early. So I like to like spread it all out, which is
Awesome. Yeah, having some degree of control over your schedule is such a huge benefit. And obviously, it could be stressful too for folks who are trying to carve it into times in the day where it's not ideal. So that's a great take home if you can do it. And if we wrap things up here, Alicia, and again, for folks who are maybe just dipping their toe into this, or even experts for that matter, who are competitors, if you had to give a female figure competitor a piece of advice, on preparing for a competition, what's that 20% of the fundamentals that's going to get them 80% of the way home? What's some of those big rocks? What would they be?
intensity, definitely intensity, effort, adherence, and also posing. You're being judged from the moment you step onto that stage. And if you spend, a lot of people will leave their posing till the very end and then just kind of throw it together, but you need to look natural at it. And if you look like a robot, someone has a good body and it's similar to yours, but they can pose and present it better than you, they're going to place better.
Awesome. Great stuff. Great advice, Alicia. Really appreciate you carving out the time today. I know you're super busy. So, where can people stay connected with you and keep up with all your awesome work?
I can be found on everything is Train It Right. I'm Train It Right on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and then my website is www.trainitright.com. And yeah, so really easy to find. Train It Right.
Awesome.